ما ثبت أنه عبادة فصرفه لغير الله شرك. Whatever is confirmed to be an act of worship, offering it to other than Allah is shirk. So basically, if we establish, and the Imam will establish, that another is an act of worship, then we understand that offering that to other than Allah would be shirk. So for example, a person said, نَظَرْتُ لِي فُلَانٍ, I vow to so-and-so, I vow to such and such, to do X, Y, and Z. That would be a form of shirk. And both another and fulfilling, both the vow itself and fulfilling the vow, both of them are acts of worship, which means both of them, if they are offered to Allah, would be shirk. So if a person made an oath to other than Allah, that would be shirk. And then if they fulfilled it, that would be another act of shirk, another act of idolatry. But before we mention the ayat, he mentions 2 ayat and 1 hadith to prove that another vowing is an act of worship, which can only be offered to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before we mention that, I just want to say one thing. There are some people who will say that another is makruh mutlaqan, that basically vowing is something which is disapproved of, is disliked, is discouraged in Islam, regardless of the circumstance. And that's not true, because if that were the case, it couldn't be any ibadah. What is a worship? An act of worship is something that pleases Allah, something that He loves. So another can't be disliked or disapproved of in every circumstance. But there is a specific type of nadar that is disliked or discouraged. And that's what they call a nadar al-muqayyad. That's the nadar which has, restrictions, or it's a nadar which is very related specifically to what? To something a person wants to get in exchange for the oath that they make, or the vow that they make, So if a person said, for example, in shafallahu maridi, if Allah will heal the one, my beloved, who is sick, for example, as a sick mother, as a sick child, he says, in shafallahu maridi, if Allah will make the one that I love healthy again, no longer be sick again. Sumtu kada wa kada, I would fast this many days. Sallaytu kada wa kada, I would fast this many fasts. And this is probably the most common form of vowing that people know. People make a vow to Allah in exchange for what? Something. Well, regarding that, Al-Bukhari and Muslim have collected the hadith on the authority of Abu Hurairah, in which he said, نهى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن النذر وقال لا يقدم ولا يؤخر إنما يستخرج به من البخيل. He said the Prophet ﷺ prohibited another. Did he prohibit all vows? He said the Prophet ﷺ prohibited vowing. Prohibit all vows? No, this vow. The vow where a person what? Says, if Allah does this, I will do this. He said, لا يقدم. It doesn't accelerate, it doesn't advance, it doesn't produce anything. ولا يؤخر. And it doesn't what? Prevent anything. إنما يستخرج به من البخيل. Rather, it is a way for the stingy person to what? To give, to be convinced to give. Basically, that's the meaning of the hadith. And so, we shouldn't say and we shouldn't understand that it's not good to make a vow to Allah. No, it is. And we're going to see why. Allah is going to tell us in the Quran and in the hadith that He loves it when we make a vow to Him and fulfill that vow. But we shouldn't make a vow that's conditional. If Allah does this, I will do this. You guys see the difference? It's different. A person says, I basically make a requirement of myself to offer Qiyam al-Layl for the entirety of this month. That's a good thing. A person basically requires himself to do an act of obedience for Allah and doesn't want anything in exchange for it except Allah's pleasure. That's acceptable, it's good. But if a person says, I will do it if Allah will what? Help me to get this job. If Allah will cure this child. If Allah will let the child in my mom and my wife's womb be a boy. You guys see that? If a person makes it a conditional, that's not good. As the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا يُسْتَخْرَجُ بِهِ مِنَ الْبَخِيلِ. It's just a means for a stingy person to what? To be made to give. So let's look at the two ayat in the hadith that the Imam mentioned that demonstrate to us clearly that vowing is an act of worship. And since if it's an act of worship, offering it to other than Allah would automatically be a shirk akbar. It would be major shirk. So the first one he says is the ayah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُوفُونَ بِالنَّذْرِ وَيَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا شَرُّهُ وَيَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا كَانَ شَرُّهُ مُسْتَطِيرًا. He says they are those who fulfill their vows and they fear a day whose evil will be widespread. They fulfilled their vows, so this is talking about the ibadah of fulfilling a vow. He mentions another ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن نَفَقَةٍ أَوْ نَظَرْتُم مِّن نَظْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ. Whatever you spend he says, whatever you spend in charity, or whatever vow you make, be sure Allah knows it. The scholars of tafsir, they say, يَعْلَمُهُ وَيُجَازِي عَلَيْهِ. He said the meaning of the verse is Allah knows it and He's going to what? He's going to give a reward for it. If Allah is going to give you a reward for something, that means He loves it and is pleased with it. And if Allah loves something and is pleased with it, it makes it worship. The Imam, he mentions the hadith. And Aisha رضي الله عنها قالت أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من نظر أن يطيع الله فليطيعه ومن نظر أن يعصي الله فلا يعصيه. Whoever vows that he will be obedient to Allah, he should be obedient to Him. Let him do it. That's a command from the Prophet. If the Prophet commands us to do something, that means Allah loves it and is pleased with it. If Allah loves it and is pleased with it, it makes it an ibadah. So he says, whoever vows that he will be obedient to Allah, then let him be obedient to Him. Let him do that. And whoever made a vow that he will disobey Allah, let him not do it. Let him not fulfill it. So in this way, the Imam, he mentioned two ayat and one hadith that clearly demonstrate that another, making a vow, is an act of worship. And so therefore, offering it to other than Allah would automatically make it shirk akbar. And with that, brothers, we bring today's commentary to a close. I know you guys have no questions whatsoever.
One question.
تفضل Hussein, تفضل.
So how about the opposite way?
Huh?
How about the opposite way? For example, if somebody do something good, for example, sadaqah or do something good and make a vow like, may Allah do this for me. After he did the good thing.
If a person, I don't think, okay, I'm going to answer this. I got what you're saying. It sounds to me, Hussein, like something called a tawassul. A tawassul, there are three permissible types of a tawassul. And one of them is what you just said. A person does a good deed. And then they ask Allah, oh Allah, by this good deed, right? If I did this for your sake, right? Then do this for me. That is permissible. It's permissible, it's encouraged, it's legislated. And one of the proofs for this, and many of you probably have heard this hadith, is that there were three Jewish men, pious Jewish men who were traveling. And they were traveling, and all of a sudden there was this torrential rain that started to pour down. And so they sought some place where they could seek refuge from the rain until it subsided. So they slipped into what? Into a cave. So once they got in there, a rock fell from on high and closed the opening of the cave. And they were like, oh, now we're trapped. And we'll never be together. They couldn't move it themselves. He said the only way for us to escape is if Allah causes this rock to move. And the only way for us to get Allah to cause the rock to move is to do what? A tawassul, right? And they did tawassul. Each one would mention something that they did for Allah's sake. And asked Allah, oh Allah, if I did this for your sake, then please, move this rock. Let us escape. Let us get out. And each one of them, when they made a tawassul in this way, by a good deed they did, the rock moved slightly until what? When the third one said it, it moved enough for them all to get out. The Prophet mentioned this in a hadith as if to tell his companions that what? This is an acceptable way of what? A tawassul. So that's a little bit different than what? A vow. So if you mention it after the fact, it's called a tawassul. I did the deed, right? I stood up and prayed all night. Afterwards I say, oh Allah, if I did this for your sake, then please help me get out of this financial difficulty. Please, allow me to be cured from this illness. That's a tawassul. It's perfectly permissible. Yeah. Tafaddal, Hussam, you said yeah.
Yeah, I'll just go.
Tafaddal, if we can answer, we'll try.
Alright, so I came to my idea the
Okay.
Right, so I said, like, you come, so let me read all myself. Right?
Hey.
First, is this okay? And second, like, for newcomers who be coming, like, see like me, just like break me. Should they fill in this space or maybe just
MashaAllah, it's a very good question. It's a very good question, very valid question. So the Prophet you were the one. You were the one that left him in the back. So there's a hadith where the Prophet said, he said, I want to make sure I get the wording correctly. He said something to the effect of, لا صلاة لمن صلى منفردا خلف الصف. أو كما قال. He said there's no prayer for the one who prayed by himself, and he was the only one in the row. So if there's space, you're supposed to fill the space. And if you didn't know that, I'll come to that. I'm going to come full circle. Okay, so the first thing is that if a person comes in and there's space in the first row, they should fill that space. They should not pray by themselves voluntarily. They shouldn't do that. Okay? But what if they came and there was no space? Then absolutely they could pray by themselves behind the row, and they're the only person in that row, and they shouldn't do what some people do, is they'll come in and they'll try to pull somebody from the front row to join them in the back. They should not do that. Because one, that's tashwish, right? One, you're disturbing the person who's trying to pray. And two, you're taking them from what? Al-makan al-fadil ila al-makan al-mafdul. You're taking them from the better place to what? To a lesser place. Okay? So you should just pray by yourself in that one row. A person says, well, what about the hadith? La salat liman salla munfaridan khalf as-saf. The answer to that is, اتقوا الله ما استطعتم لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Right? And every other ayah and hadith that tells us that we're only responsible to do what's within our capacity. I can't join the row, there's no space. And so of course Allah is going to accept it because what? I did what was in my capacity. Like a person says, okay. I didn't know. And I prayed by myself even though there was space. So basically in our Sharia we have a qaida that says, من جاهل الحكم فأخطأ ففعل محظورا أو ترك مأمورا فلا إثم عليه ولا إعادة. There's a qaida that basically says, it's supported by a number of ayat and hadith, that whoever was unaware of the ruling of something, so they did the wrong thing. They either did something that was wrong or they abandoned something that was required. There's no sin upon them, and there's no what? There's no amends that they have to make. They don't have to make up anything. And there's lots of examples from this from the Sunnah. So for example, I think it was Ammar ibn Yasir. He was sent by the Prophet ﷺ. He was sent by the Prophet to, he was sent on an expedition to do something. While he was away, doing that business for the Prophet ﷺ, he became junub. And he didn't have any water to make ghusl. And he had an idea, a general idea about the concept of tayammum, but he didn't know how you were supposed to do it. He didn't know the ruling of tayammum and how it works and so on and so forth. But he did know that ghusl is ta'meem al-badan bil-ma'. It's where you what? You soak your entire body with water. Every part of your body should be touched by water. So he said, okay, we have this concept of tayammum in the deen. I don't know the specifics of it. But I know that when you use water, Water has to cover your entire body. So he guessed. He said, maybe I just need to what? Make sure the dust touch my entire body. So he said, I rolled around the dirt like a donkey. This is what he said. These are his words. And he said, and I prayed. Then he said, he returned to the Prophet ﷺ and he told him what had happened. He told him what had happened. And the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا يَكْفِيكَ أَن تَفْعَلْ بِيَدَيْكَ هَكَذَا. And he taught him how to make a tayammum. But you know what he didn't say? He didn't say what? Now you need to go and do that and make your prayer. He didn't say that. You see that? That's an example of من جهل الحكم فترك مأمورا أو فعل محظورا ليس عليه شيء لا عيادة ولا إثم. Got that? Another example. Famously, if you guys remember, that fasting, it evolved. There was fasting 1.0, and there was fasting 2.0, and there was fasting 3.0. Y'all remember that? So now, when we get to fasting 3.0, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He told them, He said, فَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. I'm sorry, مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ. And it stopped. That's how the ayah was revealed, to take them to what? Fasting 3.0. Because there was a period where at Maghrib, you had to what? You had to break your fast, and you had until Salat al-Isha or until you fell asleep, whichever came first, to break your fast. And after that, you had to what? Resume your fast. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to abrogate this and give them what? The entirety of the night for fast breaking, He said, فَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا. He said, eat and drink حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ, until the white thread becomes distinct from the black thread. And it stopped right there. There was no min al-fajr yet. So one of the Prophet's companions, reading that, took it literally. So when night came, and it was getting close to the daylight, he took a white thread or a white hair of a camel, and he took a black hair of a camel, and he put it under his pillow. He did like this, and he just what? He ate and ate and ate until what? Until the sun came into his apartment, and he could clearly see the white from the black thread, and he stopped. Is that right? Is that how it works? That's not how it works. So he went to the Prophet the next day and he told him what he did. He said, this is what I did. You know, Allah said, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ. He just took it literally, right? Right? So the Prophet said, he said, Ya fulan, inna wisadaka la la'arid. He said, you must have a big pillow, because that's talking about the thread of what? Night on the horizon from the thread of day on the horizon. And then Allah revealed, min al-fajr. But notice what the Prophet didn't say. He said, you got to make up that day of fasting. He didn't say that. Because why? Man jahil al-hukm, fafa'ala mahdhuran, aw taraka ma'muran, laysa alayhi shay, la itham wala iyata. So that being said, sometimes something like this happens, and we make our best guess. And look at the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We make our best guess, and we do like what you did. I'm trying to do a favor to somebody who might come late and have to stand back here by himself. And so you make your best guess, and then you come to find out after the fact that, hey, that wasn't right what you did. Your prayer will still be what? It will still be accepted. It will still be valid. لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ شَيْءٍ لَا إِثْمَ وَلَا إِعَادَةٍ. Yeah, now then we should beat up. We should beat up. No, you should do them like you did me. Kick them in the leg, and then they can't stand for prayer. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاك الله خير.